Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Espresso 4.0. Today, I do have with us a special guest, Jakub Kaczyński. Jakub, welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Excellent. Thank you for taking the time to take a brief coffee break with me. And why don't you start us off by telling us a little bit about who you are and why we should listen to you?
Sure. So, as an industrial portfolio director, I'm responsible for having the answers that manufacturers need, that manufacturers expect around digitalization, Industry 4.0, industrial AI, all those areas that make a difference in digital world, helping manufacturers, helping industrial customers to use and understand their data, of course, to increase their operational efficiency in various areas, quality, maintenance, production, stuff. And at the very beginning of my journey, it was more technical oriented. I was working as an architect, developer. Now I shifted to more blended technical and business related.
Got it. So you are a blend of technical knowledge and business expertise as well. Perfect person to talk about, perfect person to share their experience with us and the audience. Having said that, let's dive deeper a little bit into that in your background. How did your journey from developer and architect to portfolio director shape your perspective on managing customer needs?
That was an interesting ride for me. From the very beginning, it allowed me to be very close to the customers. And it occurred that for me, that it's extremely interesting to be very close to them, working with them directly and learn the way that they work and they think about digitalization. And one of the biggest learnings, for example, that I had was being painfully pragmatic. And now, as portfolio director, my job is simple. I need to have those answers for manufacturers' problems. It's simple. It's not easy, not always, but combined with this practical approach, learned during this technical part of my journey, it allows me to answer pragmatically, avoiding those buzzwords and hype, and to connect what needs to be done with how this should be done.
Fair enough. Yeah, certainly Industry 4.0 is filled with buzzwords and trends and fads. So it's very important to cut through that BS and find what pragmatically actually brings value and what it is, in fact, the reason to onboard certain solutions or start certain projects in the field.
Yeah, and we see that business is more and more tired with that chaos in that space.
Yeah, that makes sense. You recently, now talking about your job, we actually had to move this episode, reschedule it because you were working on a project. So recently you mentioned that you're wrapping up a major energy monitoring and optimization initiative across 30 sites, I think. Could you walk us through the challenges and opportunities that came with managing such a large scale project? I'm curious to know some practical kind of knowledge that we can share, impart on the audience.
Sure. So the main challenge in this particular case was that it's a capital group consisting of like 15 companies, and each of those companies work in a bit different industry. So it needs that the solution need to be flexible enough to address pains on every stage of utilities production, distribution, and usage. So varying use cases, varying pains, challenges for every type of industry, for every area. So that was one of the main challenges to try to wire up all those topics. And outside of those, let's say, capabilities, when talking about large scale rollouts, it always boils down to looking at this from the perspective of customer value. So, it's managing the stakeholders in such multi-layered, you have capital group, you have particular companies. Inside those companies, you have also multiple stakeholders involved, from the top floor, shop floor, and so on, so on. So finding every of those people have different goals, different needs, problems, and differently understand the value that this solution should bring. So that's tricky. And managing those wishes, balancing to meet also the second aspect, so timely manner, right? Because the times where manufacturers, industry can wait multiple years to see the result, those times has gone forever, I hope, at least. Now we need to be quick. We need to deliver value, in weeks to months, not in years. So always such setup is very challenging. And if we wire up to that also change management, helping customers to prepare and introduce those changes, because that, when you have that kind of overflowing solution in different that helps in different areas, in different aspects, it's a big organizational change, cultural change.
Yeah.
Start working on digital.
Okay. So I see the strategies that you employed and what were very important for you to kind of to run this project successfully. I'm curious though, from the aspect of the user or your end client, what do they need to have in terms of preparedness to fit? Like, what would be an ideal case of preparedness from them, or what should they do? What do you expect from them to do in order for you to do the things that you've just mentioned, so that it puzzles together?
In fact, it's the answer to that is a bit twofold, because on one hand, this particular customer did his job. He prepared the overview and he did some, let's say, homework. But we very often work with customers who just want to start. They don't know how. So their level of, let's say, preparedness, as you mentioned, is quite low, and that's fine, because first step is always the most important, but also the hardest one. And our goal as a IT solution integrator, as TTPST, is also to help those companies, to help them to prepare to that step and to perform it in most efficient way. So not to waste money, not to waste time, because when you start and if you fail, that can discourage for years sometimes.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, so you would say that starting something is the most important, but also the most difficult part. To that end, you've emphasized that starting with customer use cases rather than pushing specific technologies is very important. Can you share a success story where this approach made a significant difference?
Yeah, of course. I have some of those lessons learned also, some of them successful. But basically, it all boils down to having a real business benefit to the organization and to the end users, not to have another shiny toy, right? Designed by top floor for the shop floor. And I remember one particularly important lessons learned for me, because it was very early lesson that shaped also my view on technology, those use cases, and customer value. It was early days. I was young techie, passionate on industrial IoT, because that was my entry point. And at some fairs, we meet a customer who wanted to implement some digital solution for monitoring the production, a little bit of anomaly detection, IoT, AI, that kind of pretty usual stuff. And they had all requirements gathered. They were ready. they picked the technology and wanted to use industrial IoT for data gathering, some AI for analytics. And I remember that I was so excited. It was perfect project for me. That kind of requirements were ready. We are ready to jump happily into the implementation. And in the meantime, it occurred that this customer innovation team that we were talking with, they were also techies, very focused on technology. So we had a great flow, great cooperation, but they had an internal, this department had internal policy that they always needed to have a couple of innovation projects running. It was like 8 years back, so a bit different approach still, right? And sometimes they were just pushing those initiatives to roll without this kind of preparing it, without this building use cases, deeper analysis, cross-checking, challenging with key users, and so on. That kind of stuff that now we consider obvious, right? Just to have it running, because they needed to have a couple of innovation projects, and that was the goal. So we developed the use case, but without that kind of, say, appropriate context, it was useless. I mean, don't get me wrong. It was doing its job, right?
Yeah.
It was gathering the data, visualizing some simple analytics, but it didn't solve any particular important pain. I mean, it was helping, right? It was helping with some minor problems, but none of them was big one. The big pain that was, implementing solution was a relief.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how the project ended, we never leave the customer. So when it occurred, we didn't say, okay, not our problem. No, we learned our lesson. We did, that kind of appropriate use case building, and it occurred. That was a bit of luck as well, that there are specific use cases that might work. For example, it was around, if I remember correctly, around unplanned downtimes. They couldn't find the root cause of. It turned out that with minimal, additional effort, the value was tremendous. They managed to find the root cause of like 90% of missing reasons, right? Not so fun fact was that the most of those unplanned downtimes happened when operators switched CNC machines from the automatic to manual mode.
Yeah.
So that was that kind of final of the story. But I remember this project until these days.
Was an uncomfortable discovery, but lessons learned indeed. It seems like the project was bound to fail at the end, but if you hadn't actually put the effort into trying to identify what is important enough for them, a use case, a painful enough, if you will, use the terminology pain point, it would have actually ended up in trash. Instead, you've discovered something that was painful enough financially, really, where the application provided value. Because at the end of the day, we're talking about dollar signs or euro signs here.
Of course, everything has impact on the financial, but it also requires that kind of problem that appears at some point, requires also some maturity on the other side, right? There are teams, I'm sure, I've met those that would say, no, trash.
Yeah.
Don't go further this way. But usually there is something that can be done to mitigate that.
Indeed. Going off a little bit on the technology and what's necessary in terms of architecture, in your view, what role do cloud and on-premise solutions play in manufacturing, and how can companies determine the right balance for their needs?
That's an interesting question. As I'm trying to be again very pragmatic.
Mhm.
I believe that cloud services might have a tremendous impact on
Mhm.
manufacturing. However, trying to be real, I don't believe it will get a wide adoption in the industry anytime soon. I mean, that really wide adoption, right? It's more step-by-step approach, opportunistic. So looking for ways where plugging in cloud services can bring real value and are more beneficial than doing something on-prem. So, for example, by
Mhm.
using AI, right, where training models can be more effectively done in the cloud usually. So from my perspective, it's all again about those business cases. I know that I keep repeating myself, but there are use cases where going hybrid is more valuable than staying on-prem. On the other hand, there is a lot of manufacturers that still want to stay on-prem. Period.
Got it. You mentioned actually AI now and the use of cloud technology to actually get the power out of AI, right? To leverage it properly.
Yep.
What's
One
your
of the use
take on?
cases. Right?
Indeed. And so going off of that, using that as a segue, what's your take on the role of AI in manufacturing today? Are there any common misconceptions you've encountered?
Yes. So, uh, from my perspective, AI has one of the most important roles to play in the
Mhm.
future of manufacturing. But again and again, a wise use of AI. So it's not that AI is some magical tool which we plug in and plug in our operations and it will make our dreams come true. Um, Sometimes ago we made an analysis of our past years of experience around manufacturing data. It was like 200 projects in almost every industry for medium and large industrial companies, and we identified like 30 reasons of failure of data related projects. Part of them were also AI. um, of course there was more, but we categorized, drilled down to around 30, categorized subjectively in 7 areas, such as
Mhm.
organizational problems, leadership problems, disconnection from business realities, and so on and so forth. And especially the last one, by the way, is from in my opinion, the grave mistake that is still being made. But we did that analysis to have baseline guidelines for our
Mhm.
customers, and it also have shown that how hard is that to roll out, avoiding those pitfalls, right? And in general, um, there is a lot of misconceptions. One of those is I mentioned, um, disconnecting the data team from the business. So building AI use cases without link to particular business problem that we want to solve,
Mhm.
and it still happens. Um, the success story, lessons learned I mentioned moment ago, that could be easily AI use case, AI project that was done without linking it. It's the same, the same skeleton, the same
Yeah.
base. And Matthew Littlefield, the president of LNS Research, it's one of the
Yeah.
research companies that personally I admire most in the area of industrial transformation, Industry 4.0. Recently, like 3 days ago, he said that on LinkedIn that 2025 will be the year of anti-hype. Now, breaking down the AI influencers hype and so on and so on. Unfortunately, I don't believe it. I wish this become true, but I don't believe it. Unfortunately, uh, I believe a lot of hype will still. If we skip this, in Gen I hype, we will go into AI agents hype, that kind of. trend,
I believe the
unfortunately.
AI agents hype is already here among us. It's in the room with us. Okay, so I think what you're saying in terms of misconceptions, if I can boil it down or distill it down to a point, is that people often see it as a glass ball. They can like a or a magical lamp. They
Magic.
can give exactly. They can give them answers at the click of a button. Whereas in reality, first and foremost, there needs to be sort of an infrastructure supporting it, like nice, good data. And secondly, no less important, there needs to be a connection between the AI application and the data science team that's working on it, and shop floor realities, or more importantly, business impact realities, right? So you need to know your business case.
Exactly.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. Um, okay, and to conclude kind of the more serious questions, where do you see the most exciting opportunities for digital transformation in manufacturing over the next 5 years, if you exclude all the hype?
Mhm. Uh, Somehow a bit contradicting myself, I still believe it's in AI.
Okay.
It has, enormous power to change the way industry works from the shop floor to the top floor, and appropriate use of AI will enable some of those trends that are emerging for some couple of last year, like modular design, microfactories, mass customization, sustainability
Mhm.
topics, automatic execution of operations, all that stuff that we are, I would say, dreaming of partially, will be enabled by a wise use of AI.
Okay, excellent. I look forward to that. I can only speak for myself when I say that I am working tirelessly on bringing that future. So,
Yeah, that's a role of also everyone who is sharing experience and educating and so on. On the
indeed.
other hand, what I'm thinking, um, as a side note, more down to earth, because we can talk about modular design, microfactories, but again, being realistic, uh, it's not gonna happen anytime soon in the wide applicability, right? So being
Mhm.
more down to earth, I believe that more and more factories, more and more manufacturers will start to go digital, um, because that is the need, right? And I know that when we are talking about exciting opportunities, we mean that kind of mind blowing, front page of the paper, newspapers, and so on, revolutionary ideas. But looking from the other hand, on the other hand, the reality is that for many manufacturers, going digital, doing this first step we mentioned earlier, is that mind blowing innovation. This
Mhm.
first step is the hardest, and it requires the biggest change in how company operates, how it thinks about innovation. Later, it gets a bit easier, and for me, that is also an exciting opportunity. That kind of still increasing the adoption of those ideas, right?
Mhm. Indeed. All right. Well, thank you, Jakub, for imparting on us your experience and knowledge. I like to end these podcast episodes with two less kind of serious questions to bring some levity and to give the audience an opportunity to get to know you on a more personal level. So I'd like to start off by asking, outside of work, what technology or innovation excites you most?
That is hard. Hmm. Outside of industrial context,
Sure. Yeah.
recently I saw a promo movie of a startup that is trying to digitize the scent, the smell, analyze,
Okay.
distill, digitize, transfer, and then recreate at another location. And I don't know how real is that, but that sounds cool. And having this industrial background, I'm thinking already how that innovation can impact manufacturing, production. For example, I don't know, stand-based quality control. Who knows?
Indeed, indeed. I've seen the same, by the way. That was kind of trippy, but it's, I don't know. I would like to see its application in
Yeah, still, that kind of. I wish that is true, but until I see that, I don't believe that it's so close.
Indeed. And my second question is, if I called you at 2 p.m. on a Sunday, what would I be interrupting you in?
Most probably spending some time with my 6 years old daughter, drawing unicorns, machines, assembling Lego sets. That's a new thing, or just cooking something tasty. If not, there's a chance I'm reading some book. Recently, I'm reading a bit about ancient Roman history, for example.
Wow. Okay. A lot of to dissect there, to be honest. But I'm most curious is, what's your specialty when you cook?
That's hard, but I would say that I have a couple, maybe not as a whole, but I have a couple chefs meals from Spanish cuisine using
Spanish
chorizo and
cuisine.
so on. So yeah,
Okay. Nice. And a little paella.
always good.
Always good. Excellent. Jakub, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for taking a break to have a coffee with me on our latest episode of Espresso 4.0. And
Thank you
hope
for
that
having me.
we'll get a chance to do that sometime in the future. In the meantime, we'll find each other on LinkedIn as always. And for the
Thank
rest
you.
of you, I hope you've enjoyed the episode. Have a good one.
Thank you very much. Bye.